Welcome to this new video on slit openings at neckline that are finished with shaped facings. Here I will be dealing with three different kinds of slits at neck. One, the straight line. Second, which has squared corners. And the third is a V-shaped where the corner is very sharp. The straight slit has two ends almost touching each other at neck. It could be buttoned up or left as it is. The V-shaped one, the edge is pretty far. It may not be buttoned but could be tied up. In the third as well, the square shape takes it quite away and could be left as it is. In these three different shapes, I am trying to use different sizes of shaped facings, and I will show you how they can be handled so that you get a perfect finish. Let's start. I will be working with these three illustrations that we have here. They have slit openings as shown in the previous samples. One straight line, one V and one squared. The three slits look quite different from one another. The first is a straight line and has a sharp edge and is buttoned up at neck. The second is not buttoned at neck. The third again not buttoned at neck and has squared angles. Let me show you how we can plan these three different slits on paper. Let's start with the first one, which is a single line slit in the first illustration. It's simply a cut made into the center of the garment, could be CF or CB, and a 0.5 centimeter allowance added on both sides, which tapers into almost zero by the end of it. So slit depth is 10 centimeters and slit width at neck is just 1 centimeter or lesser. So the planning is done by the stitch line and not by the depth of the cut. The reason is that the stitch line is the one which decides how deep it's really going to be. So we are going to have the center line which is already marked on our pattern. We will mark 0.5 and 0.5 on either side, so that at best, at the maximum, it's going to be 1 centimeter. Once you're pro, maybe you can even make it 0.4 or 0.3. The line is drawn parallel till quite some distance, till about 8 centimeters or 8.5 centimeters, and then gradually merges into this 10 centimeter point. This is very critical. If you make it sharp or angular, the seam line, it's going to show the same result when the final garment is made. In the second one, you can see where we had the V slit. The V slit is planned for 4 centimeter width end to end at neckline. So again, we are only planning on the seam line and not on the cutting line. We first plan the depth of 10 centimeters here and mark 0.5, 0.5 on both sides for seam allowance. And this 0.5 will be parallel to the seam line, and it will come and touch the center front line. We've got the center front line and it's going to come and touch the center front line wherever that may be. And from there on, it will be a single slash deep till the seam line corner. In the third one, it's a rectangle. Again, the plan is with the stitching lines. So they are 4 centimeters apart at neckline and 4 centimeters apart at the 10 centimeter depth. The 10 centimeter depth is taken with the seam line, and as you can see, the scissor over here, it says cut through this line, the straight solid line, and then cut it across and go back again. This, of course, you can see will land up to definitive 9.5 centimeter because we have 5 centimeter allowance. In the V, we don't know where it will end. Wherever it touches the center front line, we leave it in V. But in this square, we bring it like this. And after stitching, we have to make a second 2 slashes for making sure the corners fold back well. So the cut is not only here, it also goes deep into the corner without cutting the seam. Already cut here with their center front and their sides here and the 3 necklines, which are the same before the slit has been introduced. So in the first one, you could use a paper pattern as well, but you could do direct work on fabric as well. You don't really need a paper pattern, but if it makes you comfortable to work with a pattern first, then it may not be a bad idea to do it. So you mark 10 centimeters, leaving half centimeter here first for seam allowance of the neckline. That's very critical to mark, because finally if you took the measurement 10 centimeters from the edge of the fabric, then you're going to land up with something shorter than 10 centimeters. Your neck depth, the slit depth is going to be less than 10. So we first mark the seam allowance on the neckline and then mark the 10 centimeters required here. So this is the depth. Now you will mark half a centimeter on each side as your sewing line. I'm doing it as a dot, as a broken line, not dotted. It just takes more time doing the dotted line. And in the last 1.5 to 2 centimeters, I will just make a smooth transition into this 0 point here. This you could start here, here, a little bit here. It's totally up to you. So this was for pattern number 1. For pattern number 2, we had to take the same half centimeter allowance here. I'm not marking till the entire width just now to save time. We have a depth of 10 centimeters again. And now we want a V of 2 centimeters from the center. So we can mark 2 centimeter on neckline and merge it to this depth. Now this is again the seam line, as I said, and not the cutting line. I'm doing a broken line again to show that it is a seam line. And you can see how sharp it's going here. It's going to be quite difficult actually managing this area. And I need a half centimeter seam allowance. If you're not comfortable marking half centimeter, then you could do it with little bit more, 0.6. But the more you have, the more bulk you're going to have in the seam over here. So we'll cut along this line, but till here, and then one single slash deep till here, and we will see that how we can do this. In the third one we again had 2 centimeters at the neck. So we have the half centimeter of neck, then 10 centimeter of depth. It's 2 centimeters at the bottom as well as 2 centimeters at the neck. So I'm just marking 2 centimeters here and mark this straight line. This is a grid scale, so this is 1 centimeter and this makes 1.5 and 2. So I could even place it just like this parallel. So that point was not correctly taken. Now it's well taken. Again, it's a broken line. This is again representing our stitching line. The cutting line is half centimeter away. So I'll mark half centimeter of a solid line, which will be a cutting line. I can mark a scissor for your understanding here, and half centimeter at the base of the cutaway portion. So this is going to get cut away. So we have the 3 styles ready with us. Now, using a carbon paper, transfer this line onto the second side as well, so that when you work, you're working on the correct lines. It's a good idea to pin your pattern, fabric, so that the underlayer doesn't slip away. There are lots of times that while working, the underlayer slips. So very carefully, using a tracing wheel, transfer this line, the neckline, as well as the placket or the slit opening line onto the second side. Next is the cutting of the facing. The facing can be cut by placing the actual pattern piece, or if you have a paper pattern, a paper worked out plan, placing it exactly with 2 folds coinciding. See here, with 2 folds coinciding, and you can pin it up so that they don't slip away. The facing has to be the same grain as the fabric on which, as the area on which it has to be applied. So it's very carefully done, and we need to just cut this neckline and mark these same lines again onto this one, and then we will mark its width on this side. So let me just quickly do this work for you and show it to you. I will only do it on this one piece. The second piece, the other two will be just shown, you know, already cut, but one of these I'm going to do it for you. So it's all right to cut the neckline. We don't really need to mark it because we already have a cut line over here. I'm going to just use this cutting line to cut the neckline of the facing as well. And remember, we said we are not cutting this till we have sewn it. So till here it's going to be a straight line, and then I need this wedge to be developed in the same transition. So if I want it rounded or wedged, that's totally your choice how you want to do it. You want it round, you can make it round. You want to keep it a wedge, you can keep it a wedge. I mean, you could do this as well. Need another 1/2 centimeter of seam allowance to be added to this because I want the ready size as 0.5. Now obviously if you can't, you have to mark this. You could have done it in one go also, and you can do it a second time as well. On each dot you can mark 1/2 centimeter away and get your complete line, complete round line with seam allowance. If you're not comfortable with 1/2 centimeter, you can take more also. I can join this so that I know my cutting line is right here, and I've not marked here. I'm going to go 1/2 centimeter here as well, and there you are. I'm cutting the facing. Cut it smooth as you can. Take as long cutting strides as you can. It always makes your cutting neater. I would like to pin this before I do the other curves. Actually, I should have pinned it up here as well. Here are the two samples with a V slit and a squared slit. I have prepared their facings as well. Now we are just going to place it like we did in the earlier one, placing one over the other, the sample piece over the facing. We pin it up in place so that it doesn't move away, and trace all the lines again, that is including the cutting line and the sewing line. The cutting line, as we did in the earlier sample, we could just do cutting along with the already existing cut. We don't need to trace it, but these lines we will need to trace together on this. That is one of the ways. After this is done, one of the ways to do the work is to, like we did in the just a simple slit, the slash, that we don't cut the slash till we have sewn it. The second is that we cut the slash, so we can try it in these two samples differently. We can cut it and see if it makes a difference. So you could adopt any of the two methods. Especially in the single slit, I find it easier to first stitch and then cut away. But in these more handleable sizes of slit, we could cut the slit first and then sew it. The process could be changed because there is these are little easier to handle. Now what we need, we already have the neckline. We need to trace this sewing line on both the samples and then decide the width and mark the seam allowance. So I'm first going to trace the seam line with using a carbon paper. See how we can place a double layer of carbon paper to trace on both the sides. We need a tracing here and we need a tracing here. So I can place the carbon like this and I can bring back the carbon onto this so that I can trace it all in one go. We can have a look at the tracing done on both sides. We can now unpin and separate out the facing, pin up the facing just by itself, and now mark the width that you require. Let us say this facing we can take at 2 centimeters instead of 2.5. It is our choice. I'm trying to make a variation so that all of you can understand that there is not a standard amount that we need to take, but we could take what we like as whatever we design and what that design requirement is. Based on that, we could decide on the width. We could also have done this as just 1 centimeter. So I'm just going to have the same 2 centimeters here as well, and I can just do a squared line here. Remember, we need another ½ centimeter of seam allowance, so I'm just adding ½ centimeter using the width of the markings on the scale, and here I'm going to add ½ centimeter as well. You can join these dots to get a more continuous line and a smooth line. And now we can cut it. This makes our facing, both facings are cut and marked. Let us see how we can sew these two pieces together. I'm going to work with the first illustration, that is just the slit. So it's a good idea to mark a little notch in the center here. This way the line is visible on both sides without even drawing it. You know, the notch makes it sort of absolute the center and you don't miss the center. You know, this is attached with a plain seam, so we work on the wrong side and with right sides facing each other. That means we are going to work with sample with right sides of the facing and right side of the sample piece facing one another. So we really have to place it in the center, and you can see how the notch really helps. I'm pinning it up here so it doesn't slip away. I'll need to pin the at the shoulder as well so that it's well settled. And I'm going to pin it in the center. If your line for any reason is not available, visible as a fold of fabric, please make sure you transfer that line. But if you've ironed it well, this line will be quite visible to you like this. So you can see how this has now been attached here. And so now you can start basting from here. So it will be starting right here, going into the wedge, going here and coming up here. I'm going to just baste it like this, because in hand basting I will be stitching from here. I'm not doing any fine stitches because right now I just need to make it settle here. When you reach this corner, you have to be very careful that the corner is sharp and well maintained. When you're going to stitch on this with the sewing machine, you have to actually pivot your needle here so that the corner is well maintained, because this is what is going to give the perfect look to the neckline corner. So maintain this corner. I'm stitching it down further. Again, we are reaching the main bottom corner of the slit. Very carefully make sure, I'm purposely working with a different color thread so you can see how the work is progressing. Make sure you really make a sharp corner and an even curved corner on both sides, even curve in the seam, so that it is a mirror image of one another, and you know, one side doesn't look different from the other. Once again, a corner, which is the center fronted neckline, must be very carefully done. Pin the facings in place. Now that you have cut it, make sure your edging, the sewing edge, the sewing seam is coinciding, and don't worry too much about the cutting edge, because sometimes the cut edge gets displaced little bit, but you must take care of that the two sewing lines on the. Next we will paste it in place, and we have to make sure that the corner, this corner where the angular seam is touching the neckline, should be absolutely same on both sides. So it's not a bad idea to keep a scale like this and mark the level so that you don't miss out that point on either side. Like keep it straight absolutely, and then mark the two levels, so that when you're machining it also, you are exactly able to see that this is my crossover point, and it shouldn't you shouldn't either skip it in any way, because that will make a, you know, that will give an impression of an uneven neckline. Both necklines are basted and placed, both the facings placed well on their positions, and now we can machine stitch. Once we machine stitch, we are going to clip off this corner to get a sharp corner. When we fold it, we are going to slash these deep till the seam but not cut the seam, and also we are going to make a slash deep till the seam here but not cut the seam. In this particular case, we are of course going to slash the neckline here, and we're going to remove a corner over here, so that once it gets folded back, it's sharp enough. And we have to make a corner slash. Remember, in the paper plan we had learned that, and that will help us to turn the facing inside, from the wrong side, from the right side to the wrong side. Otherwise it will not allow. So we have to cut it. I'm not cutting it just now, because this we should only do after we have machined the facing to the sewing and putting it in place is over. I'm going to stitch it, and I'm using a slightly different color thread on the bottom side, so that the seam is kind of visible when I want to show it to you. I'd like to do one back stitch or two back stitches, so that the seam is secure at the end. As I said, make sure the corner is well turned out and is sharp, so you must adjust this so that the line is absolutely straight and your stitch hasn't moved out from space. And now I'm going to do the straight stitch, the slit portion. Make sure it's very neatly and nicely straight. Straight portion is not very difficult to do, but it's when the curve, it's the curve that you have to really look after. So I would do a very slow stitching here. And when you reach the center, again you have to pivot it around and stitch backwards. Now once again, let me check, is it done at the right place? Yeah. I think one more stitch is pending. See, every stitch will make a difference on how it's going to look. Again, when you reach this corner, you have to really make sure that you're at the same level as the previous one, otherwise the two sides will look uneven. So make sure at this time when you pivot it around that you're exactly at the same level. a job of lot of patience and good sewing more so. Now that this is stitched, we are going to clip off the corner. Make sure you don't cut the seam, yet it is close to the seam, and we are also going to make slashes deep till the seam but not cut the seam. Similarly on the second side as well. The squared corner one is also ready now. So let's see what we have to do to this area. We are going to clip this like we did in the other sample. We are going to clip the corner deep till the seam, next to the seam, but make sure you don't cut the seam. Still more I can do. And now these corners have to be clipped in deep till the seam. So again, deep slash here but not cut the seam. Ironing is very critical to achieving good results. So first iron the seam allowance and the facing to one direction from all sides. Try and push the curve as well with 3 seam allowances and the facing as far as you can on both sides. This will help you in getting a clean fold edge for doing the under machining. The 3 layers, 1 of facing and 2 of the seam allowances must be caught together to do this understitching, which does not show on the right side. This helps the curve to settle better as well. The squared slit neckline has been sewn with all the slashes done along this line and deep slash in the corner, so that we are able to turn this well on this corner. The only way that this corner will come out neat is if the slash is deep enough, and the only way this corner will come out good if the slashing has been done close to the seam and the excess bulk of the seam removed from here. The V-slit also has been done. This was planned to be a narrower one. The V-slit is also nicely done. This sample has also been, understitching has also been done in this sample, and again it will only turn out to be a good V over here. To begin finishing the edge of the facing, fold the 0.5 centimeter inside and pin it up. You may do this with iron first. Make sure you create a nice corner here while this is on the wrong side, but its visibility through its hemming or its machining is visible on the right side as well. So it's a good idea to pay a lot of attention to these corners. When we reach this corner, this is not going to fold like this. It will not allow it to fold. Again, we must slash this corner deep till the fold line. You can look at it from this side and then do it like that, so that you're able to achieve a straight line. After the straight line starts your curve. Then fold the curve and settle it nicely. Even in this neckline, you will need to make a slash so that you're able to fold this line and this line separately. Do the same on both sides, deep till that corner where the fold is desired. Now that all 3 necklines with slits are finished, we are going to start with hemming of these on the edge. In the outer fold for the neckline, you could make these notches which will help you fold in the allowance in a more smooth manner, because it will take care of the bulk which is getting created for a larger curve to be accommodated in a smaller area. Take in fine stitches, hem the edge in all the samples, making sure that you do the corners and the curves really well. Now that these three are finished beautifully, I'm going to show you some examples from my own wardrobe, some with buttons, some without buttons, all finished with shaped facings. And this one has you can see faggoting done over here, and then button and loop opening here. This one has shaped facing all on the outside, so decorative, nothing to show inside. And the next two are also short slits, one finished with embroidery to emphasize the slit. You can see they are very popular in my wardrobe as well. And so now, if you have enjoyed this video and learned something from it, then do like, share and subscribe. And if you wish to receive further notifications, then do press the bell icon as well. Bye bye and see you soon.